So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Book Club of California's Southern California program titled Neon, A Light History. And thank you for joining us again here at Pasadena Heritage's beautiful and historic Blinn House. My name is Kevin Kosick, and I'm the Executive Director for the Book Club of California. It's my pleasure to host this program this evening, so thanks for having us. For those of you that might be new to the Book Club of California, we are a nonprofit, member and donor supported organization that is dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts. Oftentimes we do that with a focus on the literature and the history of California and the West. The book club publishes limited edition books, a scholarly journal called the Quarterly Newsletter, and an annual keepsake for our members. We host a year-round series of exhibitions and programs like the one this evening, both in San Francisco and here in Pasadena, on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, California history, and so much more. Now, if you're not a member of the book club, or if your membership has lapsed and you're interested in what we do, I invite you to come talk to me. We can't do the important work that we do without the support of our members. Our membership dues are modest and the benefits are many. You can go online to find out more about the book club at bccbooks.org. And now for tonight's program and our presenters. Again, the program's title is Neon, A Light History. And our speakers are author Dydia, DeLyser, and Paul Greenstein. Now, it's really a great pleasure to have Dydia DeLyser back with us again. You may remember that she recently presented to a book club audience back in July on her book, Ramona Memories, Tourism and the Shaping of Southern California. Now, this time, she's back with her partner, Paul Greenstein, to talk about how neon signs have served as important agents of change, cultural change, economic change, and political change nationwide. Dydia DeLyser is an author and an associate professor of geography at California State University, Fullerton. She holds a BA in geography from UCLA and an MA and PhD in geography with distinction from Syracuse University. She is also a board member of the Museum of Neon Art. And Paul Greenstein has been designing, fabricating, installing, and restoring neon signs in Los Angeles for over 40 years. Their book, Neon, A Light History, is the subject of their presentation this evening, and it is the result of more than a decade of archival and ethnographic research and more than 40 years of experience in the sign industry. Now, what's the California angle, you might ask, right? Well, our speakers use Los Angeles, not New York or Las Vegas, as a focal point for sharing how neon signs have catalyzed all kinds of important developments, innovations, and advancements. Now, I expect that tonight's talk will be a little bit scintillating, maybe, a bit outrageous, mostly because their concise history of the neon sign includes scandals, murder, fascists, and forgotten inventors. You might hear about some of them. It's been called a lavishly illustrated electrical bodice ripper and an indispensable Bible to the history of their favorite collision of art and commerce. So hold on to your seats, folks. And best of all, we are going to have some time for a little bit of show and tell, some hands-on activities with actual neon signs and fixtures after the presentation. So if you have questions for our speakers, please wait until the end. We are going to have time to take some questions, but we also want to make sure we have time for the hands-on activities for you all. And now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers for the evening, Dydia DeLyser and Paul Greenstein.
I'm actually going to turn the microphone off so I can figure it out.
On the end.
Now it's dead. Okay, I'm Dydia, that's Paul. I'm really glad to see you guys again, because it It doesn't seem like it was July, but I guess that really isn't that long ago. So I'm really glad to be back. Thanks for having me back. Tonight's presentation is going to be a bit different from the one that I did last time, partly because I have my my partner in crime, my partner in neon, my partner in life, Paul here. That man, that man again. But also because we're going to do things a little bit differently. The slideshow presentation will be a little bit shorter, and then we'll adjourn to the back tables where we brought some of our collections. This is the California Book Club. We brought some of our collection of books, including historic rare books about neon signs, the sign industry making signs, then also contemporary books, some of which are also quite rare, small sign shop biographies. There are so many coffee table books about neon in this or that city. I brought some of those, some other books. I can tour you through those. But the fun part is that Paul is going to demonstrate a couple of our what are called neon salesman sample suitcases. So these are toys or tools that he actually uses in his work making neon signs. When he goes to see a customer and they say, well, I want it to be green. Okay, what color green, right? So if you've ever painted your kitchen and you've got way down the rabbit hole of different colors of white, we have that in neon too. So, oh, come on in. It's fine. Oh, okay, it's no problem. So you'll get to see all that, and then there's even, if you're not feeling well tonight, we even have a neon device that cures all ills. The legendary violet ray from the 1920s. So we're working on, so we wrote this short book, that's the cover, Neon A Light History, and we published that in the pandemic to benefit the Museum of Neon Art and get some of our research out there in the public domain, because there's been just so little that's any good at all that's published on neon. What has been written in the past is a jumbled up myth history, mostly covering falsehoods, mostly doing that inadvertently, but nevertheless. So we published this short book. We're also working on a really long scholarly book. But I want to tell you a little bit about our research process. A lot of it is Paul's, because he knows how the signs work and how they're made from the inside out, and has been restoring in Los Angeles some of our really important, really early signs that are now about to turn 100 years old, and we'll talk more about that. But we've also used a lot of rare books, some of those old books about neon from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and also some really interesting, very rare journals that you might not have thought about. There's, in every industry, there's always a trade magazine. Whether you're the pool cleaner or whatever, there's a trade magazine for you, and there's been various ones in neon, and these days they're very rare. So this is, and I brought photocopies, duplicates, so that the originals don't get dog-eared or destroyed, because you know how the covers come off on a magazine. This is the Claude Neon News. It was only published for 3.5 years. This Claude Neon was one of the dominant neon sign companies in the United States and indeed in the world, and we'll talk more about Claude Neon. This is their first issue, and they write all about how wonderful they are, and that's really interesting. More valuable than self-promotion has been this magazine, Signs of the Times, which is the sign industry's own magazine, published from 1906 until the present day. And we've managed to acquire a complete collection from 1920, virtually complete collections monthly from 1923 until we're up to 56, but then we bought those 60s ones last year. So
don't tell anybody.
So we go into there was a special anniversary issue in 1956, and we stopped there, and then we bought some more anyways. But this is another replica issue, so that I didn't lose my cover. But you can come look at that. There's some really neat stuff. This is a cool magazine, and I only have the original. Radio News. Ever read it? Oh man, if you want to see stuff about 1920s radios, it is so cool. But there's a series of 5 really important articles about the earliest neon pioneer in here, and nobody's ever cited them or ever noticed that they even exist. So there's some really neat, rare stuff. But anyways, so we'll talk more about all those sources and how those kind of obscure sources turn into knowledge and information a little bit later. But I'm not going to trouble you, we're not going to trouble you with the whole history of neon tonight. I just want to talk about 9 ways that you may not have thought about neon before. So 9 things that just might be a little bit different about neon, and then one of those will be about neon sign restoration. So I'm going to start out doing all the talking, then we'll shift it over to Paul, and then we'll take it over there, and that will be all Paul in his shining light.
Pressure's on.
So the first thing is, all neon signs, every neon sign that you've ever seen, and always is today and always has been handmade. So every sign from the very beginning until the present day, whether you are, as Chewy is, bending the glass over a gas flame, or whether you are, as Paul is, installing that glass on the sign, they're all individually handmade. No one has ever been able to make it by a robot or a computer. There are ways to assist your hands in making it more rapidly, but there's no way not to have your individual hands involved. And you can make a neon wire fox terrier. As Kevin suggested, misinformation, mythical stories, and some monstrous characters, one particular monstrous character, have been a big part of the neon sign industry's history and mythology. First is George Claude, from Claude Neon News that I mentioned. Claude used another man's patent and another man's tubing to claim credit for inventing neon signs himself some 20 years after nearly 20 years after the other guy had already done it. He then, and that's in 1910, he then managed to get a US patent. It took years because it was such a marginal patent. It took years. He got a US patent and then came to dominate the industry by leveraging that patent and a series of incredibly hostile trade practices, including sending moles into other people's company, and stuff like that. He, in the 1940s, he became an avid Nazi and advocated strongly for French collaboration with Hitler, and then was sentenced to life in prison after the war. So that's George Claude, the evil part of neon. Neon is a name of a gas, and we call all the signs neon signs. They're not really filled with neon, and Paul will tell us more about that. So what the real name for it is luminous tubing, or gas discharge tubing. So this man, Daniel McFarland Moore, he's the guy written about in radio news. He is the first person who really developed commercial luminous tubing, and he started it in 1894. So Claude, 1910, using McFarland Moore's tubing from 1894. He kept perfecting his inventions. Here's his tubing. This is about 1912, and look at that gorgeous light. It's so amazing to see something like that so early. Moore was a phenomenal inventor. He had dozens and dozens and dozens of patents to his name, working even in retirement. But in retirement, it was in 1936 that he was murdered in front of his own home by a jealous electrician. So neon has had some interesting history. There's also a lot of false stories. If you Google first neon sign, neon history, if you look in nearly all of any of the books published or even magazine articles printed about neon, you will probably see a picture of this sign, and you will hear the story of the Earl C. Anthony Packard automobile sign in Los Angeles as the first neon sign in the United States. Great. We're anti-car people, and we're Los Angeles people. We would love if that story were true, but it's not. Our research in the Benjamin and Gladys Thomas Air Photo Archives at the UCLA Department of Geography showed us that it's not true by showing air photos of the sign, because it's known what street corner it was. So actually, so here's downtown. See that billboard, mostly black? Well, that's the sign right there. So we were able to spot it in a series of air photos, and the air photos are all dated. And in order to be the first neon sign, right, it's got to be before a certain date, because we know when other shops were founded. We also know now that Daniel McFarland Moore was making luminous tubing in the 1890s. So Earl C. Anthony, who claimed to have the first neon sign, claiming it was 1923, well, it wasn't. Well, 1923 is later than 1894. So no, it's not going to qualify. There was another company in New York that started in 1918. So there's no way that this was first. But we were able to prove that it wasn't by finding this photo from February 1924, by which time there were already other signs filled with neon gas in New York City, even separate from Daniel McFarland Moore's earlier work. What you can see though, I mean, the air photo is a little bit blurry, but this is another advertisement later for the same company. And Earl C. Anthony had a radio station, so these are radio towers, you know, and then with what looks like, see, it looks like lightning bolts. So you can see the same kind of theme here, the tower and the wires, lightning bolt, and then the Packard logo as if it's suspended between them. And the Packard logo was neon tubing. So the sign was real, the mythical sign was real, just too late to be first. That's okay, it was real. It may have been the first sign, the first neon-filled luminous tube sign in California, in Los Angeles, but not in the United States. Have you ever thought about colors of neon? Well, the first ones were almost all only two colors, red and blue. These are in a way, the purest, truest colors. They're the colors of the pure gas in clear glass. So when you see, especially red, the red color is the light of neon gas hit with thousands of volts of electricity. When you hit, so neon is a noble gas, so it doesn't bind with other molecules. And when you hit it with electricity, the electrons get excited, they move to a higher orbit, and they spit out photons that turn into light. And each gas will do that, and they'll send out that array of light in different wavelengths on the spectrum. Neon's series of wavelengths are all focused on the red. So it's a very clear and true and focused red, and it's incredibly bright. Most elements on the periodic table, when you hit them with electricity, it's not much. But neon is just bang. So as soon as they figured out they could do that, in 1897, neon was isolated from the atmosphere for the first time, and when they said, wow. And then really they started using it in neon signs, in luminous tube signs by about 1918, and using neon in signs really picked up in the United States in the late 1920s, 26, 27, 28, 29. That's when it really started to explode. So neon in clear glass, and then the other color blue is argon with a drop of mercury in it. And it's the mercury that you're actually seeing. It puts out some UV, which we'll talk about later. and also a lot of blue range of the spectrum. So the earliest signs when the big wave of neon hit in the 1920s were red and blue. And because the red is so bright and so red, most of the nighttime landscape went from being a light bulb landscape. There were illuminated light bulb signs since the 1890s. The nighttime landscape went from being a lot of light bulbs, which were in those days a very orangey, warm, and not very bright light, to the very bright neon red or the mercury argon blue. So the landscape changed to one that was red and red and red and blue, right? So the nighttime landscape really changed a lot. And of course, neon signs, light bulb technology has changed a lot. In the 1920s, light bulbs were a lot dimmer than they are today, but neon signs are the same. So they were really bright back then compared to their bulbs. These are some of the other colors that were developed later, chiefly in the United States in the 1930s, by coating the inside of the glass tube with phosphorescent minerals, and then the UV from the mercury hits the phosphors, and you get all those colors. This is another one of those salesman sample suitcases, like the ones that Paul uses in his work, like the ones that we brought that we'll demonstrate a little bit later. But of all the colors, the one color that everybody wanted was the one color that Daniel McFarland Moore pioneered back in 1894, and that was white. And white debuted, what was the date? 1938?
Yeah.
December? Is that right?
Yeah.
December of 1938 in Los Angeles on Sunset Boulevard at the opening of the Earl Carroll Theater. And hopefully, Hollywood Heritage is going to prevail against a developer and have Paul be able to restore. The Earl Carroll sign has been gone for years. The building still stands. Hopefully, Paul's going to be able to restore, or in effect, mostly replicate that legendary historic sign. Fingers crossed. But I'm a geography professor, so I have to talk about geography, and you might not have thought about this, but neon signs, I said, they're booming in the 1920s. That's the same time that automobiles became really reliable and affordable and really usable for everyday commuting and just ordinary transportation, as well as things like cross-country road trips. So before then, of course, there were cars, but they were often more expensive and more finicky. And by the late 20s, cars were just everywhere, and they were becoming much more ordinary. So neon signs and automobiles really developed together and transformed American cities and roadside landscapes in tandem. So you see a lot of neon signs, especially in the early days, for everything related to cars. And then a lot of car-related businesses that use neon signs to great advantage, like this beautiful Texaco sign in Long Beach, or here, Eat in Car. It's on La Brea? I think it's on La Brea. It was on La Brea. There were a whole series of these in what's now the Mid-Wilshire area.
It's on Vine.
Oh, on Vine, okay. And they all had neon towers to get you. It would be like a parking lot with the restaurant in the center with the tower, with the neon tower. Really, really pretty cool. So it was a whole form of architecture that developed with a neon sign and then automobile access. But look at, for example, Westwood, developed in the 1920s. So Wilshire Boulevard, as you know, runs just basically below Westwood Village. So how are you going to get people motoring along down Wilshire to go up to the village? They built a whole series of towers, neon towers. And at the top is the gas logo or the bank logo, right? So they built a whole neonized landscape. And it's one reason why Los Angeles is such a great case study for a neon city and how neon landscapes developed. Because if you think about like New York is like living, New York, it's like living in a canyon with all the skyscrapers. Okay, yeah, you could put neon signs on the ground floor and see them for a ways. You could put them on the roof and you might be able to see them for a ways. But in Los Angeles, if you put neon signs on Wilshire Boulevard on top of a spire like that, you could see them for miles. There was a sign for the 32 Olympics.
Tell them
Right.
money.
How they set a sign for the 32 Olympics in downtown Los Angeles on the roof of it's like a 4-story building, small building.
Standard Oil.
The Standard Oil building, it's still there, the sign is not. It was said that you could see that sign all the way from Cajon Pass.
You're kidding.
So when you came out, you couldn't read it from that far away, but it was a multicolored sign with all the colors of the rings, and you could see that, of course you can always see the lights of a city from far away, and apparently you could have seen that this was a different color. So they say, but it's not surprising because we know we can really see, especially neon, the red has really significant air and fog penetrating capabilities. They used to use it for aircraft beacons in the 20s and early 30s. So Los Angeles is a great model for a neon city and how it developed. But neon didn't develop just because of private businesses and small family businesses. There was a time when neon relied, like most businesses in this country, on government and public support. One thing was beer. The end of Prohibition in the early 1930s, as soon as Prohibition ended, everybody wanted you to know that you could buy beer here. And you could open a neon sign shop and make your living just making the word beer, because they wanted so many of those. There was a time where that's all you needed to do. So the constitutional amendment that ended Prohibition actually provided an enormous amount of work for the industry. But also, during the Roosevelt administration, the Works Progress Administration and all the recovery programs from the Depression, well, one of those was a storefront modernization program that would give grants and loans. I mean, we did this in the pandemic too. Give grants and loans to small businesses. In this case, it was to modernize their storefront. And what was modern in the early and mid-1930s? Neon. So all this gorgeous neon and all these super modern storefronts, a lot of those were funded by government programs.
Wow.
Then significantly, and here he is signing it, the GI Bill, Roosevelt's GI Bill. We think of the GI Bill today as a way for people in the military to come back and go to college, but in the World War II era, a lot of what the GI Bill was funding was vocational schools, and a significant part of that was, like Bill's sign shop, vocational schools in neon. Here's a whole series of returned GIs, all still wearing their military jackets, at a neon school in Ohio in 1946. So the GI Bill really expanded the industry significantly, and at that time, if you were a couple, a man who was the neon vendor and a woman who ran the office, typically is how it shook out, you could go on the GI Bill to neon school and then set up a shop in a town somewhere along the highway that didn't have a shop, or compete with someone else in a town that did have a shop, and you had a business for your life that you could pass on. And there are hundreds of neon sign shops still in the United States today that are now in their 3rd, 4th, 5th generation being passed down in their families, going back to the GI Bill. But there's also the significant influence in neon of landscape morality. How landscapes should look and what we shouldn't do with them because it's wrong. So here's Ventura Boulevard. Yeah, it's a pretty, and it's a shrunken down photo, so it is a purposely distorted image. And this is really thought of as something that we shouldn't do. But so there's a whole series of billboards on the top. Billboards advertise businesses remotely. Like the airline, Continental Airlines doesn't have an office down below. Neon signs down here, they advertise businesses almost always at their place of business. Does anybody know which one of these signs on Ventura Boulevard is still there?
Arts.
Yes!
Which one's Valley Gem and Arts?
Arts Deli is still still there. Hoffman Optometrist is in the collection of the Museum of Neon Art, and I'm not sure that any of these other ones, did somebody say there's one other one still there?
I thought Valley Gem was too.
I'm not sure. We're gonna have to go out to Ventura Boulevard and find out. I didn't think that it was, but you could be right about that. I may be wrong. I thought it was only arts, but maybe that's just because I care about the pastrami. So this is in the early 60s, when there really was a lot of signage in general. It's before cities had a lot of ordinances and regulations restricting how many signs you could have and how large a sign could be in relation to the size of your storefront or your building. So with landscape morality in the 1960s came a purge of signs across the country. There was an organized effort led by Lady Bird Johnston to purge us of billboards. Chiefly, it was not about just on the roof, it was about billboards in rural landscapes along scenic highways. And we're all fortunate that most of that is gone. But along with it, there was an entire campaign against neon, here known as scrap old signs. Through the 1960s, the neon sign industry demolished its own history and heritage, taking down signs that had been left on buildings from businesses now gone, taking down signs that were from the 20s, early neon signs, or even light bulb signs from way before neon, and just junking them out and not thinking anything about their historical value, just wanting to get rid of them. But also, neon had changed. So early luminous tubing from Daniel McFarlane Moore from the 1890s, the big early boom in the 1920s, now it's the 1960s. That stuff is not antique, it's just old. And it was getting worn and tired, and places like Beauty Rest Golden Motel were suggesting something a little less than classy, right? Neon had been affiliated since the end of Prohibition with alcohol, and some people are against that, then and still, right? And neon also advertising, you've seen these signs, girls, 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 right? So neon was connected to alcohol, neon was connected to sex, neon was connected to gambling in Las Vegas. Las Vegas boomed really in the 1960s and later. So Las Vegas is lavishing itself with neon quite late, and some of those same people who are against alcohol and sex are also against gambling. So neon got hit with 3 strikes against it, and cities across the country, including the city of Glendale, where the Museum of Neon Art is located, actually banned neon explicitly. You can have a sign, it may not be neon. So it became tarnished by some of the signs that it represented, not the pet store, apparently. But now I want to talk about how long it lasted, and still is lasting. And I'm going to ask Paul to talk about it a little bit. Because we actually don't know how long a neon sign will last. In principle, the gas in the tube, if you don't break the glass, it will light indefinitely. It's just a bunch of molecules doing what they do. So in principle, it will last indefinitely. So Paul, can you tell us about these?
Sure. I work at a different speed.
I'm on 78 and he's on 45.
I'm on long play 16. The one on the left, Acme Beer, was made in 1934.
End of Prohibition.
And the word Acme is actually clear glass neon. And the word on ice is krypton in uranium glass.
Krypton's another noble gas. It's it's really
So
cool, rare one.
It's a very in 1934 it was not an unusual sign. In fact, I have 2 of them that I've managed to find, but they haven't really made uranium glass in about 60 years.
It's a slightly greenish. If you can get like
You can almost see
housewares in
you
it.
can almost see on the picture how there's like almost a darker green ring around each of the letters
Yeah,
because
like right on the edge, there's a little bit of green.
yeah, So that's actual radioactive uranium glass.
And they made all kinds of glassware out of it. We have an orange juicer, and they make cups and stuff.
It's probably good for you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But the point is not whether it's good for you or bad for you, but rather that means that that has never been repaired, and it's 90 years old. And it still works just the same as it did the day they turned it on the first time.
Yeah, it's lit tonight in your shop.
Yeah. Felipe's, everyone knows Felipe's.
That's how they say it at the restaurant. You know, there's a big debate. Philippe's, Felipe's, Felipe's. They say Felipe.
They say Felipe's, they own it, they know. That sign was originally on the original building, which was about a quarter mile away from there. Those signs have been repaired over the years, but they're basically the same signs as built in 1934, 35, same vintage. The interesting thing about the rooftop one is that on their old location, it was one-sided, and when they moved to this building, they made it a two-sided sign. So if you look at the other side, it says the same thing, but it's completely different, made differently. So,
And there's that one sign, the parking one, around the
yeah,
back of the building.
parking one on the back of the building is probably their first neon sign, which I'm gonna guess is from the late 20s.
Yeah.
It also still works.
So that sign, we think it's from like maybe as early as 1926 or 27. So basically what you're talking about is that sign, that glass tubing, it's been working
Amazing.
undisturbed since probably 1926 or 1927. It's been working outdoors on the street at night, every night, since 1926 or 27, about 95 years, and still going strong.
You can't say that about too many other people anyway.
Not me. So we don't know how long these signs are going to last. It's an incredible and enduring technology. It's an investment up front, and then your sign is still going 5 generations later.
Amazing.
So now I'm going to ask Paul to talk about sign restoration, because now that we know that neon signs can last so long, in Los Angeles, we have that kind of nice climate. So things don't rot so badly. They still do rot, and we're going to talk about that. But we have an incredible stock of historic neon signs. Many of them had been unlit since World War II when we had blackouts, and then have only been relit or restored more recently. So there's a tremendous stock of neon's history in this city, and Paul's going to tell us about some of the work that he's done to restore signs and what it takes. Do you want the thing? That's
Do I
the
want the
light.
thing?
That's the laser button,
The
and
laser
that's the
button.
advance to the next one.
Okay, that's the advance to the next one. Yeah, like I said, I work at a different speed, so bear with me. This is the Castle Argyle. I don't know if people have seen that, you know that one.
From the Hollywood Freeway, you can
Yeah.
see it.
I think the building was built in 28 or 29 on the site of Dr. Castle's castle, if you know about that one, okay? We got someone who knows it. They put the sign up, actually, if you look on the bottom right photo with the circle, you'll see there's an awning and there's a little dark band over the back of the awning. That's the original sign, because you see on the roof, there's nothing. So that one was built in 28 or 29, and they decided they needed a little more pizzazz, so they went to this one. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a picture of it before I got to it, because it was a mess. Somebody had, quote unquote, restored it back in the late 90s. They basically just pulled a bunch of wires together, hit it with a lot of electricity, it lit up, and they went, okay, bye. And about 3 months later, it was dead again. So what I did is I took it all apart, and I think you've got pictures of the work.
Only of the awning sign, not of the big, not
No,
of the
but
rooftop
of the
one.
work. Well, we'll see what's coming up next. I'll work on that. Basically pulled it all down, metal stripped the paint off, figured out what the original configuration of the sign was, which was no longer there, and then you can see on the bottom left what it came out like at the end. And I was very flattered because, whoops, let's go back. I was very flattered because the little center thing, which I designed, they wound up, when they restored the building recently, they used that as their theme. They didn't send me any money. Maybe that was their theme, that they didn't send me anything. Anyway, okay. So, oh, this is pictures of the sign that was over that awning that you saw on the right hand. And this is the way I get them a lot of the times. You see how messed up that metal is? Somebody had hit it, I'm guessing with a truck or a boom crane or something, and they just crushed it. So what they did was they banged it back out, and they kind of loosely stitched it back together, and they'd broken some of the housings, and they'd broken some of this, so they just kind of, same thing, they wired things together, hit it with a lot of power, it lit up, they said pay me, and I'm gone. So I did a good job. You can see it was held together with a block of wood. Yeah. These are the letters that were on it. On a sign like this of the period, the way they made the letters is they soldered everything together, which was a great idea, but every 100 years or so you gotta fix them because the solder crumbles. The solder's got so much acid in it that it just eats itself up, and eventually the letters fall apart. And when you go to clean them, at the bottom of the dip tank was all these pieces of metal, and that was my sign. So what I had to do is put everything back together. So you can see that that's why it has like the blue tape on it, because the blue tape's what's holding it together while I resolder or re-epoxy everything. This is interesting because the sign, which you may not be able to see it from back there, it's made out of what's called ripple tin. So it's like a corrugated tin, and it's actually called technically galvannealed ripple tin because it's galvanized, it's annealed, and then it's pressed to make those little ripples for strength. They haven't really made that stuff in about 80 years.
Wow.
This sign was made out of it. As you saw, that whole left side was just destroyed. I found a place in Buffalo, New York that had the machine to make this stuff. And I said, would you make some for me? And they said, yeah, sure, why not? Well, a year later, they still hadn't made it. And I kept bugging them, and that finally they went, leave us alone, we'll send it to you. So they sent me 2 sheets. So this is putting the ripple tin back on, covering the damaged part of the sign, putting the ripple tin back on it.
Wow.
Letters are going back on.
Wow.
That's it painted. So this is, when I did the metal strip, I found, probably to you guys it's looking like black, it's actually dark blue. It's like a midnight blue. The silver, I just kind of guessed because I had a picture of a really nice Indian motorcycle that was dark blue and silver, and I went, I like that. That looks like 1930. So, because there was nothing left of the letters.
But you found the blue.
But the blue was there. Yeah, I did find the blue. So I knew that it was blue, and I kind of knew the rest of it a little bit.
So you mean you guessed that the letters were actually silver?
Yeah, because they would have been the background is dominant, so was it going to be white? Was it going to be silver? I guess. But I was happy with it. That's when it's done. That's what it looks like now.
And again, it was early, so there were only 2 choices for colors, red or blue.
Yeah, so we did the red and blue. We put it up with a forklift, which was interesting. I built like a little wooden platform, and the thing held it, and it went up on the forklift, and we just went
Wow.
boom, like that.
How did you learn how to do all this restoring?
I'm still learning. Honestly, I'm still learning.
It's impressive.
This is another one I did. This is the Hotel Californian, and you guys may have seen this one was on Los Feliz and Riverside for about 20 years. Just sat outside, people jumped on it. There was a hotel called the Californian on 6th and near Alvarado.
Yeah, 6 and Bonnie Bray.
Was it Bonnie Branch? Okay, well. And this was on the roof, these 2 signs.
Wow.
Hotel had a fire in the early 90s. And because of its not very close resemblance to an Eagles song, Hotel California, somebody thought this was worth saving. I'm glad they did it. It's not the right reason, but I'm glad they did it. But they put it in a park, and they just left it there. And they left it there for like 20 plus years.
Wow.
And then a company got the property that this had been on, and part of the deal was they had returned the sign to the roof. So there's one sign here that was in really good shape, one sign that was in really bad shape. The one that was in really bad shape was supposed to go to a famous actress because she had donated money to the project, and she was gonna put it in her backyard. She got the good one, I got the bad one. So I got the bad one to restore. This is kind of give you an idea of what we started with. That's the O, obviously. That's a sample of the metal. You can see how badly damaged it was.
And how thin it was after all those years rusting outside with no paint to protect it.
And here it is back up. We're putting it back on the roof. That's
And
what
there too, you found what the colors, you found
yeah,
colors.
I managed to figure out that it was orange creamsicle.
Yeah,
And where
But-
is this now?
Well, the sad part is it's up on the roof, but the building got sold to new owners, and the new owners never turned it on. And I went there one time, I said, how come you guys don't turn it on? And they went, oh, that goes on? And I said, yeah. And they went, oh, well, let's try and figure it out. And I went up there, and everything works, and everything's good. They just turned the main power off on it. Lead a horse to water. That's it.
so
That's
even
it.
when you told them it was there, all they have to do is,
Yeah. They just kind of went,
Go back
Oh.
one.
go back one. Ugh.
One of the great things about the early neon signs is the individually designed lettering. I mean, look at the letters with the capital A, but the lowercase n, right? And the really customized letter, the O, that beautifully shaped O, and how the little crossbar on the A is a little V. It's really, really, really elegant.
Cool. And the one thing about these signs, and if you look really close at this picture, you can tell this is like 10 stories up. We're way up there, and it sticks out over the street. So in order to work on this dang thing, you have to skinny out there and hang a letter. It wasn't fun. It was not fun. But the best part about it was, and you can also kind of see this too, is that the R has that long return.
Right.
Well, that thing's like 12 feet long. How do you get it up in an elevator? You don't. We had to pull it by hand up the side of the building, and what I would do is we'd pull it up one story, then I have somebody run down, and he'd push it up, and then the other guys would run up, and so it was like this tag team
Oh,
going.
so that it wouldn't bash
Up.
in.
Yeah, because otherwise it's gonna swing and smash itself. So, we had to hold it away from the building while it went up. And it's just block and tackle, because you have to get higher than the roof. So you can't
Pull it over.
hang something from above the roof. So it was an interesting thing. We finally got it up there, and you can see that there's kind of like an angled tile. So we had to get it up on the angled tile and pull it up along the roof. Well, it was amazing we got it up there without either getting killed or smashing it, but we did.
what do you mean angled tile?
You see how the roof is angled? It's not like a flat roof.
Yeah, there's a
So-
little parapet.
So it had to come up over the roof line to the other side of the roof where the flat part was. I was just happy that no one was watching. Okay, so now
Wow.
Now I'm gonna talk
Now
for just
you're back.
another minute. I'm back.
she's back.
Sorry.
I'm gonna sit down.
So as far as that sign, nobody knows who actually originally designed the shapes and stuff?
No. No, there's no name on it.
So we've done a lot of research on building permits. We did that with the Earl C. Anthony Packard sign and all these signs, all the signs that Paul restores and many other signs besides. Usually, a brand new building has all kinds of permits, and a big neon sign will have to have a sign permit, and they will say the name of the sign company that is in charge of the job, but they won't say the name of the designer. So unfortunately, the individual designers of these signs have almost all been lost to history. Sometimes it's in one of the little articles in Signs of the Times magazine, that industry magazine. So sometimes we've been able to recapture some of these elusive names of people who made really beautiful works of art.
But also, designers' names and architects' names, they just weren't that important back then. It's just like, if you're lucky, it says it was made by Electrical Products, and it's a neon cabinet, and that's it. That's all they ever say.
Mhm. Yeah. So finally, we often think of neon signs as advertising a product, like pushing, you know, whatever I'm selling in my pet store or my flower shop onto the public. But they actually work the opposite way. Neon signs attract, they draw you toward them. That's what that sign that you could see, the Olympic sign that you could see all the way from Cohen Pass, was there to do. It was there to welcome people to Los Angeles for the 1932 Olympics. So neon signs help create community. Those signs in Westwood, that's what they were doing, drawing people off of Wilshire Boulevard toward Westwood Village, right? They draw you toward them. So neon signs create community. And we've seen this all over the country, and we see it really strongly today. In neon signs that are restored like by this group of people called Signs United. That's a sign in Barstow that they had relit. I want you to talk about Tucumcari, New Mexico for a second, Paul, and what just happened there. So what happened last
Well, it
spring and what
rained.
just happened? Yeah.
It rained.
Tucumcari, New Mexico was on Route 66, but it's not on Interstate 40. So it's one of those kind of forgotten towns.
It was actually the last town to be on Route 66. So when they technically, literally closed Route 66, they bypassed Tucumcari, New Mexico. And everyone there is very fond of saying that on Thursday night, it was like bumper to bumper traffic, and on Friday morning, you could lay in the middle of the street and not get run over.
Wow.
It was that drastic. So I was just there, 3 weeks ago, working on a lot of the remaining signs in Tucumcari, because they're having a program about rebuilding, getting their signs up and running again.
Well, they had a particular problem too,
Yeah, go ahead.
because in late last spring, there was an incredible hailstorm with golf ball size hail. Tucumcari had done a lot of work. A lot of the businesses and towns and states along Route 66 have done a lot of work to restore neon. The National Trust for Historic Preservation supports that. The National Park Service supports that. Private donations support that. So Tucumcari had restored a lot of its neon until golf ball sized hail destroyed literally every single neon sign in town. The thing is, they're not on the highway anymore, so you have to want to go to Tucumcari. And what would you want to go to Tucumcari for? Well, beautiful historic neon signs is one of the things people go there for, and all of a sudden the whole town went dark. So they cried out and they did a GoFundMe online, and we contacted, because neon is a community, we all kind of know each other. So we got in touch with some of the people in the New Mexico Route 66 Association and said, hey, what about doing a barn raising type of thing for these neon signs? So sure enough, they were able to get some of the glass repaired in Amarillo, Texas. There's no neon shop in Tucumcari, so they weren't able to fix the signs themselves. So they had the glass repaired in Amarillo, and then Paul flew out there. Well, go ahead.
I flew out there and I argued with all the locals. Because
They repaired their signs.
what else would you do? Everything on the east side of every sign on the whole strip was broken, smashed.
Wow.
So I went up there and I fixed about 5 of them,
As a volunteer.
as a volunteer.
So this is, neon preservation, and it's kind of hanging by a thread, but that means that one person can be an important thread to make a rope, right? To help pull up neon signs like that one piece of tubing that went up over the roof. But neon signs have always worked that way. It's not only today. We've always built our communities around signs and around our businesses and around the signs that promote our towns. So like these people eating at the Hollywood restaurant, which was not in Hollywood, California, it was a different Hollywood. Or this guy playing for the Salvation Army and drawing other people toward them. Or what do you think these folks were doing in the duplex garages? Neon signs serve as important landmarks in our lives. I don't know who these people were. I bought their photo on eBay. So I don't know anything about them, but I have a good idea what day it was in their life and that they never forgot it. Or the duplex garages. So neon signs help us shape our communities. They've helped form the American landscape, and they continue to shape our communities today. So take it from Archie. So what I'd like to ask you to step over to the back and Paul will show you how we can do a few people at a time. And Paul will show you how both European and US style neon works and show you the different colors. And if you have any ailments, he can cure you of those too with his violet ray.
Or if you don't have any, I can give you some.
Right. And then we can, you can look at our book, and that's available for purchase. And we have some other books that I can show you about.
I just wanted to make sure you did mention that the book is back there and you're going to be able to sell it if you're interested in it.
Cash or Venmo or check or whatever.
And if people have questions, we don't have to do questions up here, we can do questions back there.
Or here, it doesn't matter.
I want to make sure we have time to do enough people in little groups in demonstration too. So let's do some questions back there, or questions on your way back there as we wrap up. But thanks everybody for coming tonight. We're going to, thanks to our speakers, Dydia, DeLyser, and Paul Greenstein. And again, this is the book if you're interested. They have some in the back. So check out, there are all kinds of books on neon and neon history and also the demonstrations, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can take your questions from both sides of the room and make sure it's pandemonium. Yes.
I want to make what might be a humorous comment. So that's not Sam Elliott in the photo with you?
No, that's Paul with his hat on.
Could be.
Yeah, everyone says he looks like Sam Elliott. Yes.
So where do you get neon?
Neon, it's a great question. Where do you get neon? Neon comes out of the air. It's in every breath we breathe, not very much of it. It's a very, very rare element in the atmosphere. It's like, 1/1,000,000th of a part per, it's very, very rare element. But it's extracted from the air we breathe by cooling the temperature down, 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 down. And every other element freezes out at a higher temperature until you get to the temperature that neon freezes out at. And then you're left with neon. And you bottle it, and so now you buy it from a series of air gas companies. Georges Claude, that fascist, he also had, he had earlier air gas patents that he stole from a Brit and another German, and a German incidentally. So he adapted their patents that time. He was a really good adapter of other people's ideas. So he had air gas patents, and Air Liquide, if you've ever seen the trucks that say Air Liquide, that's Georges Claude's original company, still selling air gases. The really genius thing for Claude, the Nazi, was, it's free, it's in the air, and I'm gonna sell it to you! Right? You take a resource that's freely available to anybody, and then you sell it and make money. So, a little bit of brilliance there, I guess. Right? So neon is in the air, argon, krypton, all the noble gases are in the air. And so that also means it's infinitely recyclable. As soon as you break the tube, psst, it just goes right back into the air from whence it came, and then you just suck it right back down. So it's absolutely infinitely and perfectly recyclable. It does not degrade. You can put it in a sign, break the glass, put it in a sign, break the glass, right? You never know if you get the same molecules. They don't have names. So, yes?
A couple of things. I got here late, so forgive me if you already talked about these things. I read that one of the reasons that neon has kind of, you don't see people putting up new neon signs, is that the signs are expensive to maintain and repair. And Kevin Starr, who wrote the famous book of books on California history, he mentioned in one of his volumes, I can't remember which one, neon also fell out of favor because it was associated with declining inner city neighborhoods, and there was a tawdriness to it.
Yep.
What's your thought?
So I can talk with you more about the tawdriness, and it was in inner city neighborhoods, but also other neighborhoods, and we talked about that here at one point. And Paul can talk more about neon's longevity and its cost. So neon is making a brand new neon sign is more expensive than making an LED sign today, because any kid with a hot glue gun can deal with LEDs. Whereas it takes years of skill to learn to bend neon and to do the kind of work that Paul does. But the neon signs that we saw that are 95 years old and still working, LED signs are very iffy. The quality is getting better, but there aren't any that are really even 20. I mean, usually they last for a year or two. So, it just depends on what you're investing in. Neon signs are also mostly sustainably sourced and recyclable. That's, okay, so it's now the boxes called cans used to be made out of steel. It's mostly aluminum now. That would be the same with an LED sign, so that's neutral. Neon is in glass tubing. We know glass recycles, and it's made from sand. So we're not really in a glass shortage. Neon uses copper wire. Copper is recyclable. There's, copper is a high value item, and it's highly, highly recyclable and recycled. Neon, as I said itself, the gas, is infinitely and perfectly recyclable. LEDs, on the other hand, there are some high-end companies that are beginning to scavenge the toxic metals and rare earth minerals out of the diodes, just the diodes themselves, but the diodes, LED, light-emitting diode, the diodes are the tiny little bulb-like thing that emits the light, but they're all encased in plastic, in petroleum products, and there isn't any company that's been able to recycle these long ropes of plastic. And if you have a light bulb sign, when a light bulb goes out, you just unscrew the one bulb and put another one in. With an LED sign, it's a bunch of LEDs along a strip, and if one goes out and you don't like it, you have to replace the whole strip. So the whole thing goes into the waste stream and is non-recyclable. So that's really been a disaster, especially considering it might just be like a year later or something that you're junking this whole thing out and starting again. So there are actually examples of prominent companies who have changed their sign from neon to LED because they were told it was supposed to be cheaper. Actually, the electrical usage, it's really competitive. It depends on whose LED is, and it's really tight. But they switched their sign to LED, and then they found out the LEDs were a lot of trouble, so they actually then remade the sign in neon again. So more and more people are recognizing that neon is an enduring and sustainable technology, and that LED is not. So it's real different, yeah.
What can you tell us about the neon graveyard in Las Vegas?
So the neon graveyard in Las Vegas started as what's called a boneyard, from a shop called Yesco, Young Electric Sign Company. I have their published biography of their company on the table. So that's the Young family. They're a Mormon family from Utah who started a sign shop in, I think it was 1909, before neon-filled tubing in the U.S. And so light bulb signs. And they expanded down toward Las Vegas and became one of the big sign shops in Las Vegas that could do those enormous signs, which not everybody can handle. Most neon sign shops have what's called a boneyard, a backyard, because what they would do is if you wanted a sign for your business, well, it's expensive. So instead of buying the sign from my neon shop, you would rent it from me. So I would make the whole sign, so that's on me, materials and labor in my shop. And then I get money from you every month. So you're paying me on the installment plan, but if you keep your sign for 20 years, I make out like a bandit, because you've paid me many times over for your sign by now, right? So many sign shops would rent their signs, and this is across the industry. And so therefore, if, let's say, you closed your business and you're done with the sign, you want a new sign, well, you don't just junk it out. It comes back into my boneyard. It's mine. And I'll put it in the boneyard and save it because I may use it in your business and just put different letters on it, right? Just change the glass. So the Neon Boneyard in Las Vegas started out as the graveyard of signs for Yesco, and they started eventually opening it to limited tours, and then that went forward to create it's called the Neon Museum Las Vegas, and that's what it is today. They moved a portion of their boneyard signs to a new site and arranged them artfully outdoors to look like a boneyard, but now it's a museum.
None of them are plugged in, right?
No, some of them are. A series of them are, and they're actually starting to restore more of their signs. They're just having a lighting for a brand new one that they just finished, I think, next week. So they're starting to restore more of their signs.
It's the same family.
No, it's a 501c3 nonprofit. So it's not owned by Yesco, but Yesco has I'm sure donated significant money, including the signs. So, or or they, you know, or they were paid for some of them. I don't know the financial details of how they
But
started.
Wesco is still run.
Oh, Yesco is still,
Same family.
Yesco is still owned by the Young family, by descendants of the original founder, by direct descendants of the original founder, very proud of their heritage, and they're still operating one of the largest sign shops in the country, and still family owned. And that's classic for sign shops, to stay in the family.
Even though they have these signs promoting all these vices and things.
That's right, that's right.
We're gonna get you a sign,
Even
Bill.
though,
We're gonna get you a sign.
even though, right, so Yesco is the Young family is a Mormon family, and they're doing some of the biggest gambling signs and all the strip joint
Yeah.
signs and the beer signs in Las Vegas, right? So, you know, I guess it's not a conflict to them. I don't,
This is business.
that's right, business is business.
Well, thank you everyone again for coming. If you want to check out some of the neon in action back there on the tables, now's a great time to do that. You can take any of the materials that are on your table here with you. The book club programs, book club membership information, please take that. And then also if you're interested in the book, Neon, A Light History, see Dydia in the back.
Yep,
I'm gonna get one
right?
too.
Oh, great, thank you, oh, great.